In this video, we will uncover the 7-stage collapse pattern. A simple but powerful blueprint that shows how all empires rise, and how they eventually fall. We'll see how Rome used it, how Britain ignored it, how the Soviet Union tried to escape it, and why many indicators suggest modern America may now be entering the same stages. This is not about politics, not about emotion. This is about history, economics, and repeating human behavior. And once you see the pattern, you will never look at global power the same way again. Every empire begins the same way, with hope, ambition, and a vision so powerful that people are willing to sacrifice everything to build it. But the story never ends the way it begins. Let's travel back to the empires that once ruled the world and see how the collapse pattern quietly started. Rome began as a small city, full of farmers and soldiers. They believed discipline was the greatest strength. For centuries, Rome conquered land after land, building roads, armies, wealth, and glory. But then, something changed. Success made Rome confident. Confidence turned into arrogance. Arrogance turned into corruption. Leaders overspent. The government took massive loans. The currency weakened as silver coins were mixed with cheap metals. People didn't notice it at first. But history did, and Rome began its long, slow fall, not from enemy swords, but from decisions made inside its own walls. Spain once ruled the oceans. It controlled vast parts of the world. Ships arrived loaded with gold and silver, so much wealth that Spain believed it would never run out. But then, everything changed. Instead of building industries, Spain relied only on gold. Wars became expensive. The government borrowed more and more money. Soon, too much gold entered the European economy. Prices doubled, then tripled. Inflation crushed ordinary people, and within a century, Spain, once the richest empire on earth, became one of the most indebted nations in Europe. Britain ruled a quarter of the planet. Its navy, its language, and its economy shaped the modern world. But global dominance came with a cost. 2 world wars destroyed Britain's finances. The empire borrowed heavily, especially from the United States. After the wars, debt exploded, inflation rose. Colonies demanded independence, and in just a few decades, the empire that once controlled the world shrunk into a single island nation. Britain didn't fall suddenly. It fell in silence, through debt, exhaustion, and changing global power. The USSR was a military giant. It controlled 11 time zones. Its army was massive. Its ideology was powerful. But behind the scenes, the economy was collapsing. Factories failed. Production fell. The government borrowed secretly to keep the system alive. People waited hours for basic food and supplies. And then, one moment changed everything. In 1991, the Soviet Union fell apart, not because of a foreign invasion, but because the debt, inefficiency, and pressure became too much to carry. 15 new countries were born, and one of the world's most powerful empires vanished overnight. Different empires, different eras, different cultures, yet the same signs appear again and again. Rapid growth, overconfidence, overspending, rising debt, internal division, and a final collapse. This repeating cycle is what historians call the 7-stage collapse pattern. And in the next part, we will break down each stage clearly, simply, and powerful, so you can see exactly where America stands today. For thousands of years, empires rose and fell. Different flags, different leaders, different cultures, but the collapse pattern was always the same. Let's break down the 7 stages that every superpower moves through, and the stages that America may now be entering. Every empire begins with struggle. People work hard. Society is disciplined. Leaders are focused. Growth is slow, but steady. Rome built its republic. Britain built its industries. America built its factories and innovation. In these days, the empire becomes powerful because it earns its success. No shortcuts, No arrogance, just ambition and effort. Once an empire gains strength, it begins to expand. Rome expanded through conquest. Spain expanded through exploration. Britain expanded through global trade. America expanded through industry, technology, and global influence. Wealth increases. Armies grow stronger. Confidence rises. This is the moment when the empire feels unstoppable. This is the highest point. The moment when the empire dominates the world. Rome controlled the Mediterranean. Britain ruled the seas. The US led the world after World War II. At peak power, the currency becomes dominant, culture spreads globally, the military becomes unmatched, the economy reaches maximum influence, but peak power brings a dangerous mindset. We will stay powerful forever, and that belief is what begins the fall. This is the stage where empires quietly lose control. Rome began wasting money on luxuries. Spain spent fortunes on endless wars. Britain overspent to protect its large empire. The USSR spent beyond its limits to maintain its system. Governments start borrowing heavily. Debt rises, the currency weakens. Corruption spreads. Society becomes divided. The empire still looks strong. But behind the scenes, cracks appear. This is the silent beginning of collapse. In T's days, the empire becomes dependent on debt. Rome mixed cheap metals into its coins. Spain printed money, backed by gold it did not have. Britain borrowed massively from the US. The USSR hit its real economic weakness. Debt grows faster than the economy. Interest payments explode. The empire can no longer pay for everything it promised. For America, this stage shows up as rising national debt, repeated borrowing, higher inflation. Struggling middle-class, political fights, overspending. Once an empire enters a debt spiral, escaping is almost impossible. Every empire eventually reaches a moment where the system can no longer handle the pressure. Rome faced invasions and internal chaos. Spain faced bankruptcy. Britain lost its global dominance after the World Wars. The Soviet Union collapsed almost overnight. A crisis can be a financial crash, a currency collapse, a major war, political breakdown, hyperinflation. This is the moment when everything starts to fall apart. This is the final stage. Rome split permanently. Spain lost its global empire. Britain transformed into a smaller nation. The USSR broke into 15 countries. The empire doesn't disappear completely, but it becomes a shadow of what it once was. What remains is culture, legacy, influence, but not dominance. And now the world is asking, which stage is America in today? Empires don't fall because of outside enemies. They fall because of internal chaos. Rome was divided. Spain was divided. Britain was divided. The USSR was divided. Today, America is deeply divided. Politically, socially, economically, culturally, a divided society is a weak society. And history shows no superpower survives long when its people turn against each other. This is the most dangerous sign, because a superpower collapses not when its people lose trust, but when the world loses trust. The pound lost trust, gives British Empire collapsed. Spanish silver lost trust, gives empire collapsed. Roman currency lost trust, gives collapse began. Today, countries are trading without the dollar. BRICS is growing, nations are buying gold. New payment systems are being built. Global trust in the dollar is no longer guaranteed. This is the strongest late-stage signal of all. Based on all signs, Stage 1, past Stage 2, past Stage 3, past Stage 4. Deep inside Stage 5, entering Stage 6. Possibly future. Stage 7 depends on next choices. The battery is here. The signs are real. History is whispering, and the world is watching. This is the moment where history starts repeating itself, louder than ever. When an empire enters Stage 4 and Stage 5, pressure begins to rise slowly at first, then suddenly, like a storm. And today, the United States is experiencing the same warning signs that appeared just before the collapse of Rome, Spain, Britain, and the Soviet Union. Let's explore the danger signals that show how close the cycle may be. to accelerating. This is one of the biggest red flags. Every empire collapsed when debt became too expensive to manage. Rome couldn't pay its soldiers. Spain couldn't pay its bankers. Britain couldn't pay its empire. The Soviet Union couldn't pay its own system. Today, America's paying massive amounts just to cover interest, not the debt itself. Just the interest on old borrowing. This means less money for schools, healthcare infrastructure, research, innovation, and more money going to lenders and financial markets. This is the same pressure point that pushed past empires into crisis. Inflation is a quiet killer. Rome mixed cheap metals into its coins, gives prices skyrocketed. Spain flooded Europe with silver, gives money lost value. Britain printed heavily, gives pound weakened. Today, America faces rising food prices, rising energy costs, expensive housing, shrinking savings. People feel poorer each year, not because they earn less, but because their money buys less. This is the same late-stage signal that warned of collapse in past empires. Every empire collapses when ordinary people can no longer sustain the system. In Spain, inflation destroyed the middle class. In Britain, wages couldn't match rising prices. In the USSR, everyday life collapsed before the government did. In the US today, millions living paycheck to paycheck, rising credit card debt, families choosing between bills, young people unable to afford homes, savings disappearing when the middle class breaks. The empire becomes fragile. No empire falls united. They fall when they become divided from within. Rome split politically and socially. Britain struggled with conflicts after the wars. The USSR fractured ideologically. Today, America is experiencing political polarization, cultural battles, social distrust, institutions losing credibility, groups seeing each other as enemies. A divided nation cannot respond to crises, and history shows internal division is the final warning before Stage 6 begins. This may be the strongest tension point of all. A superpower stays powerful only as long as the world trusts its currency. The moment trust fades, the empire begins to fall. The pound lost trust, gives British Empire collapsed. Spanish silver lost trust, Empire died. Roman currency lost trust, gives crises exploded. Today, countries trading without the dollar, BRICS strengthening, global gold buying at record highs. New payment alliances forming. This is the same global shift that ended other empires' financial dominance. This is the point where the collapse pattern speeds up. Rome couldn't afford its borders. Spain couldn't afford its wars. Britain couldn't afford its empire. The USSR couldn't afford its ideology. Today, America faces high military costs, high social program costs, high healthcare costs, high government expenses, high debt payments. The weight is becoming heavy. Maybe too heavy. This is the moment where history whispers. This is where everything starts to fall apart. History never repeats perfectly, but it always rhymes. And every empire that reached this stage faced a crossroads, a moment where the future could go in very different directions. The United States is now standing at that same crossroads. And based on the patterns of past empires, there are 3 possible futures. Let's explore each one. This is the British Empire scenario. Britain didn't collapse in one day. It slowly faded over decades. Lower growth, rising debt, weakening currency, reduced global influence, a shrinking middle class, no explosive crash. No sudden disaster. Just a long, quiet fall where the empire becomes ordinary. For America, this would look like the dollar slowly losing power, China rising quietly. America becoming one major nation among several, less global control, a smaller role in world affairs. It's not dramatic, it's not cinematic, but it's how many powerful nations end. A slow, steady decline that most people barely notice until it's already complete. This is the scenario no one wants, but history warns us it is possible. Rome collapsed rapidly during invasions. Spain collapsed during bankruptcy. The Soviet Union collapsed almost overnight when its economy broke. For America, a sudden shock could be triggered by a major financial crash, a global shift away from the dollar, a massive geopolitical conflict, a political breakdown, A large-scale banking failure. Runaway inflation in this scenario. The collapse is fast. The debt bomb explodes all at once. Confidence disappears. Markets panic. The system freezes, and the empire loses stability quickly. This is the hard landing, the unexpected moment that future history books talk about. This is the rarest outcome, but not impossible. Some nations avoided collapse through painful but necessary reforms. Japan stabilized after its debt crisis. South Korea rebuilt after the Asian financial crash. Finland recovered after the USSR collapsed its economy. America could choose this path, but it requires discipline and cooperation. It means controlling spending, reducing unnecessary debt, increasing productivity, rebuilding trust in institutions, avoiding political divisions, strengthening the middle class, investing in innovation instead of short-term fixes. This path is not easy. It demands courage from leaders and patience from society. But if the U.S. chooses this path, the decline could slow down dramatically, maybe even reverse. This is the survival scenario, the one where the superpower keeps its influence and avoids the final stages of collapse. Right now, all three paths are open. History gives us clues, but not the final answer. What we do know is this: the next decade will shape the next century. The decisions made today will define whether America continues as a global leader or becomes another chapter in the long list of fallen empires. Every empire believes it is different until the moment it realizes it is not. Rome believed it would last forever. Spain believed its gold would never run out. Britain believed the world would always revolve around it. The Soviet Union believed it was unbreakable. But history had other plans, because power is never permanent. Strength is never guaranteed, and every empire, no matter how mighty, follows the same human pattern of rise, peak, and decline. Today, America stands at a turning point, not because it is weak, but because history is repeating its ancient rhythm. The warning signs are here. The pressure is rising, the debt is growing, the world is shifting, and the cycle is moving forward, step by step, stage by stage. But the future is not written yet. The United States could decline slowly, collapse suddenly, or reform and rise again. History gives us the pattern, but we choose how the story ends. So here's the question we must ask. If every empire fell because it waited too long to change, will America make the same mistake? Or will it be the first to break the cycle? Thank you for watching. For more cinematic stories about money, power, and the hidden patterns shaping our world, make sure you subscribe. This is Mindshift Economy, and we're just getting started. Now that we understand the 7-stage pattern, let's bring the story into the present. Because history is not just something written in old books. It's a warning system, a mirror, a prediction machine. And when we compare America today with the empires of the past, the similarities are impossible to ignore. Let's connect the ancient pattern to the modern world. America's rise, expansion, and peak power are already behind it. The 20th century was America's golden age. World's strongest economy, unmatched military global influence, the dollar becoming the world's currency, technology leadership. The U.S. became the center of the world, just like Rome, Spain, and Britain once were. But powerful empires never stay in stage 3 forever. This is where the decline begins quietly. In history, stage 4 looked like this: governments spending too much debt, rising political conflict, corruption or mismanagement, expanding military costs. And today, the U.S. is in this exact position. Budget deficits every year, trillions in spending, multiple wars and foreign commitments, political division at historic levels, a government too divided to fix long-term problems. This is classic stage 4 behavior. This is the point where decline speeds up. Just like Rome debased its currency, Spain drowned in inflation, Britain borrowed heavily after wars, the USSR hit its failing economy today. America faces rapidly rising debt, increasing interest payments, weakening purchasing power, struggling middle-class inflation shocks, massive government obligations. Debt is now growing faster than the economy. This is the definition of a debt spiral. Once an empire enters stage 5, history shows it almost never escapes. When the middle class collapses, the empire soon follows. Spain felt this when food prices exploded. Britain felt this when wages fell behind inflation. The USSR felt this when shortages spread. And today in America, rent is rising. Food is rising. Healthcare is rising. Education is rising. Wages are not keeping up for many families. Debt is now the only way to survive. Who's like late-stage empires.